you believe in miracles? Yes. I think Al Michaels actually had that written on his cuff when he used that line, and it was a classic signature call. The Lake Placid Olympics, 1980 American team knocking off the almighty USSR, which seemed like it was impossible. And it was applicable again last night. If Michaels was calling a game, he might have resurrected that thing. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForrest, and happy to be with you on the program today. Going to be joined here in just a couple of minutes by the great Mike Jones, who is filling in once again for Scotty M. Scotty M's been up and down with the weather, much like the game was last night. Now, I was laying 5.5 in this one with the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati Bengals, Dallas Cowboys, Cincinnati Bengals on the road. Bengals in their losses, they've been tough losses. Their defense is a sieve. More holes in their defense, as we like to say, than an O.J. Simpson alibi. So they're going to be suspect, even against Cooper Rush and the Dallas Cowboys, who had resurrected themselves from a shallow grave where they'd won a couple of games in a row, including the Thanksgiving Day game. But albeit, who did they beat? They beat Mike Jones' beloved New York Giants, which isn't saying much, and came back and accomplished another victory and had faint playoff hopes. But I didn't think that was enough to be within a touchdown of the Cincinnati Bengals. So I thought that was a very generous offering. Surprisingly, the game goes off 4.5. And yet, you need, and we're from Florida here, where highlight was a very popular sport. And when you were betting on highlight, which if you were already criminally insane if you were thinking that you could win consistently at that, come on, Joey, throw that thing. You always had to sweat out at some point a series of miracles. And you would say to yourself, well, if the 2 can beat the 3, and then the 2 goes on and loses to the 4, and the 4 wins 2 points and gets the 8, and you're thinking, that's never going to happen. I don't have that kind of luck where I can survive that kind of a series of events where everything, it's like these people that are betting the 10-team parlays, where everything has to go my way. And that was a situation last night. There was really, it seemed like, only one way that you could prevail, as the Bengals were forced to punt the ball and are sitting there in a 20-all tie. There's about 2 minutes left to go in the ball game. Lo and behold, the kick gets blocked, and you had Leon Lett, too, as it's then subsequently muffed by one of the special teams players on the Dallas Cowboys, goes right through his arms. Cincinnati recovers, and the only thing, you're thinking, even with all of that, the Bengals are probably going to find a way to move the ball about 20 yards down the field. They eat up the rest of the time, game-winning field goal, and that's it. Bengals win by 3, you're fucked. You lose to the point spread. But sure enough, you're rooting for the touchdown there, and with a minute to go, you get Jamar Chase, breaks loose from a tackle with a spin to the inside, sprints up the sideline there, and goes in for the touchdown. All of a sudden, you're in a position to cover, which you eventually did. Series of miracles it took. And so the Cowboys go down. You know, as we've said before on the program as well, nothing with Dallas involved is more satisfying. Since Debbie Does Dallas was out there, well, maybe you were in the initial stages of puberty. There's nothing more satisfying than watching Jerry Jones in complete agony at the end of a ball game trying to alibi away his level of responsibility for putting together a shitty team and justify the fact that they lost yet another game in horrific fashion. So hopefully you made a score in that ball game, and that was great. We're going to get into this thing with Juan Soto, with Mike Jones in just a sec, but let me tell you this. Bet online. Wow, that's the place to go if you're betting. The world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the game while you're wagering on it as it happens. They have the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, and college basketball, the NHL, UFC. As I've been saying, I'm a big boxing fan. There's a lot of big fights coming up. You have Usyk and Fury, the rematch, and several other bouts on the card as the Saudis are pouring money into the game there. And so they're able to make undercards that are especially attractive. They have it all at BetOnline. Head to the BetOnline website today. And don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, one of our affiliates here that carry the program. That's all in caps, BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. And our game usually starts with Scotty M. He's under the weather. So we have a handsome gentleman in his place here today, and that would be one Mike Jones, one of my favorite people now. Background with the New York Giants. Hell, he was hanging out with Parcells, this guy. Michael, thanks so much for getting up with us and being with us on the program. How are you, my friend?
Oh, it's a pleasure. Great to be with you.
All right, I'm looking at some numerology here, and this reminded me of another incident that took place here in South Florida. And this was 2006. I was a big horse racing reporter at the time. I had a couple of horse racing television shows that went throughout the state on what was then called Sunshine Network. Now, wouldn't mind being reaffiliated with them, as they're now known as FanDuel TV, which would be very appropriate for us with Bury Your Bookie. So I'm covering the Fasig-Tipton sales at Calder Racecourse. They were having a horse auction at Calder Racecourse, which they did every year. And there's a horse in the ring called the Green Monkey. I don't know if you remember this. I'm not sure what level of horse racing interest you have. And the Green Monkey sells in a bidding war for $16 million, which I believe is a record that will never be eclipsed. I mean, think about that. This is 2006. You're talking about paying $30 million for an unraced horse who was not going to make his debut then for at least another year, and had great bloodlines. Was a Stormcat colt, and had great bloodlines going back. If you went generationally, was well-bred enough to justify a high price. But I don't know that any horse could have justified eclipsing whatever the highest price paid at auction was by many millions of dollars. And you ask yourself, well, were you better off possibly being the underbidder in this case? And the answer is a certainly and conclusive yes. As the Green Monkey raced 3 times in his career, lost at 2-5 at Belmont Park in his original maiden race, and what was off the board then in a subsequent race, raced one more time, also was off the board, and ended up 0 for 3. You could have bought any nag at Mahoning Valley in a claiming race and been better off and had more of a ripe return on your investment than the Green Monkey paid in terms of dividends at $16 million as a purchase price. And it made me think about this whole Juan Soto thing, which I know you wanted to comment on. I'm looking at the numerology here. Mets offer versus Yankees. Mets offer 15 years, Yankees 16. Mets offer $765 million, Yankees $760. Mets annual average is 51 million. The Yankees annual average is 47 and a hook. The signing bonus, Mets give them 75 right up front. The Yankees only offering 60. And it seemed like the deciding factor was, and this always kills me when it's part of a negotiation. We've seen it over the many years where after getting some exorbitant amount of money, the contingency all hinges on whether a guy is going to sign or not, whether he gets free use of an airplane or in this case, it was, I guess, influential that the Mets offered Soto the opportunity for his family to make use of one of the luxury suites, whereas the Yankees, after putting $760 million on the table, said, oh, well, you know what? We're going to have to collect a little money on the luxury suite. They wouldn't throw it in. And that was it. Whoosh. They're out of it. They're hoping that Aaron Judge has a big year this year, and maybe they sign Pete Alonso. And the Mets have Juan Soto. But does it make them a championship team, Mike Jones? What were your thoughts on the whole Soto scenario?
I thought it was interesting that it comes down to the 2 teams in New York. And my thought is, give me what happens if Judge gets off to a good start, Soto comes up and makes out some big games, and all of a sudden it's like we're paying this guy double, and Judge, who in my opinion is probably the better player, a little bit better defensively, a little faster, gives you a little bit more. I think maybe he didn't want to be a Yankee. I think maybe he felt like, let's go cross town. He liked the New York life and, realized it was 15 million and didn't want to take a back seat possibly to Judge and his success or who's the better player. And maybe he wants to go to New York to compete with, not necessarily on the field, but in the back pages or, in the social circle. And maybe this is what baseball kind of like too. You might have had the front offices of baseball say, let's get the New York Met Yankee rivalry. Maybe it's good for the lift of the game, but the contract's ridiculous. I think something had to have happened there that he decided to become a Met against a Yankee, that he didn't want to take a backseat to Judge. That's hearsay. I heard Mad Dog Russo break it down like he can't figure it out. He's your right field porridge. He's your right. Everybody loved him in right field. He could be perfect. And then I'm thinking, yeah, that looks so obvious, but maybe that's not what Soto wanted. So to justify it, he tells the Mets, Scott Boras, the brilliant agent he is, tells the Mets, let's raise the ante just slightly and we'll come. Maybe that's what did it. It just doesn't. You would think you'd want to be Yankee with a better chance to win. I don't think this gives the Mets. It helps the Mets, obviously. The NL East has still got pretty good teams in Philly and Atlanta. And so it's still going to be a tough run, just like it was in the American League East. This does give the Mets a huge boost, but doesn't make sense to leave the Yankees and the history to go to the Mets. But Cohen's going to make the richest owner in baseball is going to make a splash, and he sure did here.
And it seems like it came down to what would appear to be minor differentials in terms of revenue, and yet it's hard to sneeze at an extra $4 million a year. I mean, for Juan Soto, it may not make that much of a difference in his lifestyle. Certainly would make a difference in mine because I'd be out of here if I had $4 million just one time.
I think we had that discussion this week.
Well, now you would think too that from a betting standpoint, and we were both very successful when we did that show here on No Filter before the baseball season this past year, and both of us hit on any number of future plays, including the one that I had on the Marlins with the inside information that they were absolutely going to be the most awful team that you've ever seen in their history, including expansion years, because they were going to sell out everybody. Sure enough, by May, they were trading Louis Arise, who was a solid, legitimate major league player. They were going into the season without Sandy Alcantara, who comes back this year. And so there were reasons to believe that their inflated total of victories was going to be badly underachieved. And sure enough, we were cashing our ticket sometime in June, I think, on that bet. Will there be a tendency, in your opinion, on the part of bettors, and I think it's only natural to immediately think that the Mets are going to be a great deal better than they were last year when they surprised everybody by going to the National League Championship Series, going well beyond the Charles Dickens-like great expectations. I would imagine, too, that a lot of money will go up in smoke on the over on the New York Mets, who lost one of their key starters in the rotation, Severino, oddly to the A's for $60 million plus.
Really? Yeah, that was interesting.
And still have a lot of questions to answer in terms of their rotation and also the additional factors that they may lose some other guys to free agency, including one of their big sticks and a clutch player in Pete Alonso.
Right. Well, what you've done is put back the seats. The seats are going to be filled now. People are going to be interested in this. The Met fans that are there, competitive with the Yankee fans, they took one of the bigger assets to the Yankees away, so it's going to be a positive for the Met, filling up and flushing. But I think you get a boost here a little bit, probably maybe 2 or 3 more wins. You're going to see maybe it goes to an 86, 87 to 90 or whatever it is. You get that, but they still got to get to the pitching. But I think if this guy's willing to give 765 to Soto, he's going to make a move on with pitchers for sure. So I think we're not done yet. If we're a Met fan, there's more to come, I think.
Well, I was a Yankee fan growing up as a kid, as just about everybody was in the area of Brooklyn I grew up in. And in 1962, I changed my allegiance to the New York Mets. 64, I started working at Shea, selling souvenirs as a 14-year-old DeForrest. Did that all the way through the 69 Miracle Mets season, which was fantastic because I also ended up working at the Jets games, and they won the Super Bowl, of course, that year as the Mets won the World Championship. We didn't know that was going to be, in the Jets' case, their last shot at glory for the next 50 years. And the Mets, of course, have dabbled with championships and won one since, but few and far between. So I would think that this is going to be one of those years where there are going to be overly inflated expectations. And I'm not sure that this one guy makes he makes a difference on any team he's on. You have to give Soto a lot of credit. He turned down $400 million from the Nationals a couple of years ago.
That's right.
The Yankees have to feel beyond left at the altar because they traded 5 guys to get Soto.
Right.
Got him for the 1 year. If you think that it was worth it to be all in, they made it to the World Series where they ultimately lost to the Dodgers, who are the one team in Major League Baseball that you look at and you say, my God, who could be more fucking loaded than that? It was impossible to conceive that they wouldn't be a contender every year. And here they are in the offseason. They still have 3 Juan Sotos in their lineup,
right.
with Ohtani and Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. And, the other thing that I look at with these kind of deals, seldom have they worked out for pitchers where we see pitchers get long-term deals. More often than not, by the time the guy gets anywhere near the end of the deal, he's already a shot fighter.
Right.
And we've seen this also in effect. The Albert Pujols deal was one that really comes to mind. When you're giving a guy, even though he's 26 and seems to be approaching what's going to be a very significant prime, how long is he going to be able to sustain that? Is he really is a 42-year-old Soto? Are we going to be watching a guy that's hitting no better than Choo Choo Coleman did for the Mets many years ago? And is staggering around with load management to play half the games, and you're paying that guy $50 million. I would imagine whatever salaries are at the time, that's still going to represent a very serious compromise. And you're going to be hoping maybe like Willie Mays that Soto's capable of getting you a swinging bunt in a key spot
No.
and making it to first base. But the longevity of the thing, I
Yeah.
think, is a big shocker to me. And those deals seldom work out for position players.
And there's an option there year 5, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Year 5, there's an option. So you see where you're at and where the team is and what happens. But when you have, money burning a hole in your pocket, obviously, like Cohen has, it's a risk. But he's getting his name out there. He wants to be the guy. He wants to bring a title to the Mets. This is what it takes, And then I think you're right. This could be something down the line, and maybe by year 10 of this contract, he's an average paid player. We don't know where it's going to go. I've seen these contracts go, and they look really good. 10 years later, they're not, because the prices increased. We'll be paying $3,000 for a bleacher seat, maybe. Who knows? And so it doesn't. We don't know. So yeah, it's an intriguing deal because Ohtani, to me, is the best player in the game, and yeah, he got X, and he deserves it, a 10-year deal for what he got. This is just interesting. It matches it because of the years. And what does he care about, the money? But it's, he's a great hitter. I don't think he gives you much defensively. I think you saw some of the plays you saw out there in the playoffs. It was maybe even a liability. Good arm, but doesn't have the range, doesn't see the ball right. Baseball guys I've talked to think he's a liability. But you're just making a splash. And this is the way the games are now. You want attention. We're an instant gratification society. Social media grabs us all. Let's get the deal. Let's get it out there. See what season tickets we can sell. And, and then hopefully he brings a little bit of a winning attitude. He's a great player, good hitter. I'm sure he's a great locker room guy. And we stole something from the Yankees. So I think it works probably for what they're doing. But again, to your point, what happens in 4 years if you're sitting at 80 and 80 and you're like, where is this taking us? That's the next step. So what do you do behind it? To me, the more intriguing signing from a serious baseball angle was the best pitcher in the league. Probably the second half was Blake Snell, and he goes to the Dodgers. And to your point about a big deal, it's not, 5 years, 6 years. But isn't Kershaw the last big deal a pitcher got? And look where he is now. Like, wasn't he a 10-year deal, if I'm not mistaken, for $300 million? So, yeah, you're right. The pitchers are a big deal. But that's what's going to wins these championships. You got to have good pitching, and the Dodgers showed it, consistently in the World Series and what they had. You're watching a game, and not to go back to, but the Padres series, you're watching a game where the series is in jeopardy, and the Padres throw their guy out, and the Dodgers put 8-man rotation in for 1 inning, and they shut him out. So, it's like, this is the way baseball has changed to a purist like ourselves. It's like, what are we watching? We're all talking on the thread, all my baseball guys, as we're watching the game and going, this is incredible. Tampa started it, I think, years ago, and now teams are taking it up in the same way.
To their detriment somewhat.
Yes, yes.
But it's just cash will never live down that taking Blake Snell out of that World Series game.
Right. And this is
one shot Tampa may have had to ever win a World Series the way the franchise is operating. And sure enough, this guy pulls a guy out because he gave up like a half-hearted infield single. That was insane. I'm just hoping, Mike Jones, that my Met doll, I have the one Met bobblehead, and I sold a lot of these when I was a vendor at Shea.
Yeah.
And every one of them came out of the box either with a cracked head or the spring was broken. So I have the one intact Mr. Met bobblehead here, and I'm hoping that Juan Soto brings them back-to-back World Series, and I'm going to sell this thing for a fortune.
Didn't the Mets kind of overachieve in your mind this year, getting away?
Yes. It was great.
Right.
It went just the opposite. Cohn went all in the first year, and then he got rid of everybody, and they had a better year.
Right.
So, that's one of the interesting aspects of how do the Rays compete in the AL East every year when they have nobody and the constant turnover as soon as a player is established? It's kind of like being one of these lower-level FBS schools where you find a guy and you recruit him and you go all after every thing that you can do to entice the guy. Maybe you have a little NIL money. Right. And if the guy's any good, then here comes Penn State, and they're going to pay him, or Michigan. They're going to pay him like 5 times as much money, and he's gone. And so you can't really sustain any level of excellence with the program. Hey, I want to get into this. I was just looking at the lines for the college football playoff games, and the ACC getting zero respect here. You have SMU getting 8 and a hook from Penn State, a team notoriously known over the years for choking. And we know about James Franklin in big games. I don't know if he's going to be able to reverse that and shrug off that negative tag. It's always ugly when somebody has to live under the aspersions that are cast their way that they're not a clutch hitter. We saw that even with Barry Bonds, where he was not a particularly effective in the postseason, but it was a very small sample size, and yet that was the label that Barry Bonds is worthless in the postseason until he had like a couple of monster years there with the San Francisco Giants. But SMU getting 8.5, Clemson getting 11.5 in their game against Texas. Texas sort of, in my opinion, tailed off a little bit, including their loss to Georgia. That they weren't as overwhelming against the opposition as they were earlier in the year in different games. Lost to Georgia a couple of times. What do you think about that? I mean, is that fair? Is that justified? SMU plus 8.5, Clemson plus 11.5 versus Penn State and Texas, respectively.
Here's where I think the price maker's going here. I made my lines. I always look at this. Oh, here's the matchup. It's fun. Like I do in the NCAA tournament with basketball. I'll look at this. So I was off on these lines pretty significantly. Within 2 points, probably at least. I thought Clemson was more 8.5, 9, 11.5. I was to the shading the underdog, my end. I feel two things. I think the pressure playing at home is going to mount on these teams that have these home games. I would think that two of the dogs should cover at least. I think we might even see a winner. I just look at it like you're going to get out there. Yeah, you got your fan. It's not going to be all Penn State fans or all Texas fans because the tickets are going to be equal. So if you travel, you're going to get access to the tickets because it's an NCAA sanctioned function or whoever's sanctioning it. This is not the regular, your own school giving out tickets. So there could be a fan base that could be equal at 50-50. So you're still in a comfort zone, but you're still playing, you're still playing this game. So I think the lines to me seem inflated. So I kind of look at it like I think the one that I could see, though, is more Texas over Clemson, just the offensive lines and this and that and where Clemson's going to beat, and it could be one there. But, yeah, I think SMU's got a chance. I think they're decent up front, similar to Oregon up front. They're beef up front. They got speed. Quarterback's going to be elusive. Does Penn State think, oh, we got an easy path now? We got Boise State next. I mean, they're thinking how far they can go. I would think I'll talk more next week, but I would think I'm going to kind of take one of them for sure.
Indiana getting 7.5 from Notre Dame. Notre Dame has been treating the opposition like it was the clubbing of seals. They're winning by 30-plus points on a consistent basis. They did have that one aberration there where they lose to Northern Illinois. That's their only blemish on their record. And yet 7.5, Indiana was a high-scoring, high-wire act. It was like Nick Walenda going over the Grand Canyon there on that wire. And I mean, leave it to Walenda to miscalculate the fact that, holy fuck, there's wind up here. But so that was a little shaky. But is that line, in your opinion, appropriate?
That was one of the closers. I had that around 6.5, 6. And again, it's, we got the James Madison North team, going up there to the recruits and what he's done. He's done a tremendous job there. Should be in the running for National Coach of the Year with Dillingham from Arizona State. A great accomplishment getting Indiana where they are. Playing in state, going against the big boy, and look at their schedule. This is probably the biggest boy other than Ohio State they've played, and they struggled in the Ohio State game. I mean, these games are going to be interesting. Once again, you're going to get, probably a Notre Dame crowd. A lot of people want to see Notre Dame get out. They didn't out in the conference. The one lost Northern Illinois. How good are they? But they played well, beat A&M and A&M. But again, another one of these games. And these games are intriguing to me because they're really not close. The closest one to me is the next one we're going to talk about if we do talk about it.
Yeah, Tennessee.
I think that's it. I mean, I just see Notre Dame winning this game just because of the talent factor, history, all that stuff. But I won't. None of these, an upset in any of these spots is not going to surprise me. And I think we're shading the home team favorite a little bit higher than I think we should in this particular. I think the pressure's on these teams. These teams should advance to, that's the way I look at it. I think it's, I think it's good. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Notre Dame is what that's the 7-10 game, I think, right? Is that what that is? 7-10 game. So they would end up going to play Georgia. So that would be, one and done for that. I don't know how they could compete with the SEC in Georgia, but we'll see.
All right, Tennessee 6.5, getting 6.5 from Ohio State. All of the underdogs are on the road, facing teams in their home stadium in this configuration of the college football playoff system. So yeah, we'll have plenty of time to try and dissect that. It just struck me that the ACC, which many people thought they wouldn't get a second team in there, if SMU doesn't rally in that second half, they're out. And Alabama is in, and then you have to ask yourself if either SMU or Clemson were playing Alabama, or would they be given
Well,
favorites consideration? And the answer is probably no.
here on Bury Your Bookie, we're going to look at it and say, okay, we're gamblers. We're all going to sit there. Where does this happen? So if you're putting the best 12 teams in, are they the best 12 teams that we can figure out who's favorites, who's underdogs? One way of looking at it. Yes, the NCAA doesn't want that for accomplishment, but gambling's rising. So to me, the question is on a neutral field, is South Carolina, Alabama, and Mississippi favored over SMU? Yes. Are they favored over Clemson? Yes. Are they favored over Boise State? Yes. Are they favored over Arizona State? Yes. So you're looking at the SEC rise. So my thought process is immediately when this came out that we should eliminate the championship game, because if we're trying to get in player safety, do we want to add a game that's unnecessary? So my thought is, let's give the regular season champ that bye and go there. I think this is going to end up where it's 16 are going to go eventually, because you're going to look at the people are going to say if SMU, Arizona State, Boise State, or Clemson get blown out in their games, oh well, look what would have happened. I mean, I listened to ESPN, who's going to take different takes on everything, come up with the fact that South Carolina should have been in. One of the guys had them in. I mean, they're the 50 team. They lost.
You would have been happy with that.
Oh, I would have been thrilled. My house would have been fantastic to be around for that. But yeah, it's just just one of those things. But when you're listening, it's it. But I think they did a decent job. I think what they're trying to do is make people want to go to the championship game, play in the championship game. Eventually, you'll see where guys are going to sit these games get down the line, so it's not going to be a real true championship test if they're going to think they're going to play in the first round anyway. It's just I just look at it like we should have given the regular season a champion by earn the regular season, because Saban said this interesting enough that the teams in the SEC will not schedule tough out of conference opponents. And that first week is always intriguing. As Bury Your Bookie will tell you, the professor, we all come on there. We get excited to see that Oregon-Georgia first matchup that you're going to see. And that shouldn't exist if you're an SEC team, because you're going to go 5-3 in conference and have no shot. Only 2-3 teams had 2 losses in the whole conference now. There's no East and West. Everybody's in one. The schedules are going to be conflicting. So one guy might have a weak schedule. He's got 8 teams he's not playing. He could get the right. So, I mean, I think Kirby Smart made reference to it. That's saying the Greg Sankey on the podium, basically saying how hard he made the schedule. So these things are going to happen, and I think you're going to see less of those early great matchups that spark up college football in September now, moving forward, because of the schedule conflicts and the conference games, especially in the South.
I was happy we were able to fill in for Scotty N today, because I figured you had overwhelming enthusiasm and probably were planning your social itinerary around watching the NBA Cup quarterfinals tonight.
Oh, I am, right.
Great significance, I'm sure, to a lot of people, especially Adam Silver, who's probably
right.
in a fetal position in his office saying to himself, well, why the fuck did I do this?
Right.
I've got a couple of games in the NBA there. I was reading something yesterday in the NHL, the handicapper, talking about how the Blackhawks, who were on a 6-game losing streak, were cinched to lose to the New York Rangers, so just gave Shesterkin that huge contract and have a dynamite goalie. Of course, they lose 2-1, so it shows you the treacheries of venturing into any kind of gambling venture.
Right.
I know you're, just on the spot here. I don't know if you have any plays that you wanted to give us. I mean, if you have a game for the people out there, they're all dying for it. Yeah, and it was a good week last week, so
right. I haven't talked about tonight. I haven't dug in. I'll get into the NBA as soon as we move a little forward. I like to get a little bit of sample size before, but this Thursday night game is very intriguing between the 49ers and the Rams. So looking at it, Rams coming off a huge win in Buffalo, probably the best game of the season when you're watching Nakua and Kupp go wild, and Josh Allen puts up a unbelievably record performance of 3 touchdowns rushing and passing, which has only been done, I think, since Otto Graham in 1954. So you're seeing a player like Josh Allen who, with lack of pressure, has come up and developed into something else. But here we got the Rams, who get a stunning win, shocking most people, get a big win in Buffalo, and they're 7-6, and people think they have a chance at the division and a wild card. And talking about this, why are they a 2.5-point underdog to a decimated, injured team like San Francisco? Well, they righted the ship a little bit. This could be a revenge factor game. I'm leaning slightly toward the 49ers in this game because of all the hype behind the Rams. Why is the line 2.5? Rivalry game. know the Rams need it more, but still the 49ers sell a little bit of playoff hope live, 2 games out with 4 to play. They have a win over Seattle. Seattle goes into a tailspin. 10-7 might win this division. So I think the 49ers, with all their injuries, have a lot to play for, and I kind of like them in this spot.
At home as well. So usually you're recorded 3 points on that. This time only 2 and a hook. The 49ers have been extremely underwhelming against the point spread this year and routinely overrated. And the bookies are doing their best, I'm sure, to adjust. But they've been a very difficult team if you're a 49er fan. Speaking of being buried, I mean, you're already gargling with embalming fluid thinking about that. I'll give you one last thought here before we make way here on this edition of Bury Your Bookie, and we thank you for getting up with us and getting involved in the thing. I had an inclination because the bet looked so silly to me. C.D. Lamb last night, the over-under on number of rushing yards on the Cowboys' C.D. Lamb, over-under on rushing yards was 1.
Right.
So I'm thinking, okay, they love to run this guy on some kind of a sweep, especially with Cooper Rush. They want to get C.D. Lamb the ball in different fashions. Large likelihood that at some point in time that they'll pitch the ball to C.D. Lamb, he'll run the ball. So you are going to get the one a carry out of C.D. Lamb. And then that works one of a couple of ways. Either the Bengals, whose defense is horrible, they sniff it out and thwack him for a 6-yard loss, and then you lose. Or he busts one up the sideline, picks up 9 yards, and you're going to the window with a big smile on your face. So what do you think the final total was of rushing yards by C.D. Lamb? And he did have 1 carry in the game. Uno, my friend.
Unbelievable. I saw the play, and I didn't realize you were looking at the action, but I did too. And I
had to do something with it because it just looks so ridiculous.
I same exact thought. Funny how great minds think alike. So I'm sitting there and I'm watching this going, he got 1 yard on that run. And he gave up. He could have probably turned it up, but the guy came on and hit him, and he's trying not to fumble, and he looked like he went down a little easily. Very interesting, but I did notice that prop. I thought that was hysterical.
I mean, if the guy falls forward, we can show the over with 2. So that works. All right, Mike, enjoy the NBA Cup. I hope you get seriously involved, as I think you're going to be. So that'll be a lot of fun. I really appreciate you doing this last-minute pinch hitting role for Scotty M, who unfortunately, whatever it was that he had. See, that's the way it works in Florida. You're sick for a day. I mean, on your deathbed. Then you're fine the next day. You're going to the beach and you're looking for the waves to surf by the pier. And then 2 days later, you're knocked out again, as if COVID-19 has just come back into play. So he was out, and I appreciate you getting up and doing this. It's always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much for joining us here, and I'm glad you got involved in that C.D. Lamb prop bet also.
It's very funny.
Shows that sick minds think alike.
That's right. Hey. I'll be the replacements. They made a movie after me. Bring me in for Scotty M anytime. I'll be the replacement.
Yeah, Keanu Reeves, just another ridiculous performance in that movie. And who made him a quarterback? Thanks so much for being with us, Mike. Always a pleasure. Mike Jones, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate him filling in. Appreciate you guys tuning in to Bury Your Bookie. We'll do it again tomorrow. We'll have Troy West with us. He'll join us from Seattle out there on the West Coast. And then coming up the rest of the week, Michael will be back with us again on Thursday. And Professor bounced back, man. You talk about a guy that can come off the canvas. He looked like Tyson Fury in the 12th round of that first fight with Wilder. After getting knocked out, the guy's seeing stars. And he gets up off the canvas, wins the rest of the round, ekes out a draw on that one. And so the Professor, who's been getting pounded a lot during the course of the year, came back strongly this week. I believe he was 4-1 with his college plays that he gave out here on the show. So he'll be joining us again, and I'm thinking he's going to get hot. So be sure to stick with us throughout the week. Thanks so much to the people at No Filter, Bet Online, Greenlight Ventures. I'm Jeff DeForrest, and hoping everybody gets a chance with those NBA Cup games to bury your bookie.